So possible being. My father used to say, he said, I cannot look in the microscope, the electron microscope, and not believe in God. That's what he used to say. And that's because he had intellect. Because he knew that this cannot be by chance. The DNA molecule. I mean, this is a miracle, isn't it? All organic life that we know has this same basic DNA molecule, which is extremely complex. My father used to say that if you compare it to the computer is a child's toy. You know, and you have this in the amoeba. You have this in the most simple animals. The molecule is not as long, but it's still basically the same. Even viruses, you know, they plug into your DNA, right? They get into the cell and they take over the DNA and they change the code and they make it produce the virus instead of producing what it's supposed to be producing. These are miracles. And this cannot be by chance. Impossible. And any idea of evolution in which the evolution of species or of life just happens, comes out of the soup and it mixes itself, totally impossible. Ignorance to the highest level. In the 19th century, the debate over evolution, among the greatest people that took part in that were people like Cuvier, who's at the end of the 18th century, the early part of the 19th century. He knew Lamarck. Lamarck begins the evolutionary theory debate in earnest, although his theory is laughable. And Lamarck is the one who believed that giraffes get long heads because they stretch, you know, to eat the leaves, and then their child comes out with a little bit longer neck. The next one gets a longer neck, that you can inherit earned attributes. And Cuvier almost expelled him. Cuvier was a great scientist. He was one of the greatest scientists of his time, of the Enlightenment. He's the one who talked about the dinosaurs. He's the one who put the dinosaurs together. He's the one who talked about the ancient fishes of the sea. He was an incredible biologist. And then Agassiz is one of his students. He had other students as well. And they said that what Darwin talks about as the mechanism of evolution is the mechanism of the extinction of species. And as Cuvier pointed out, he said, if you give me the bone of any animal, any bone, he said, I can put the whole structure together. And I can tell you whether it ate meat or whether it grazed or whether it was omnivorous. Because he said, everything in this body is organically and integrally connected. And therefore, if you make any major change in the body, you will incapacitate the animal, or you would debilitate the animal or the human being, unless everything changes with it. So you can't just have a slight change in the eye and then another slight change in the eye. Everything has got to change together. This was his idea. And therefore, people like Cuvier and Agassiz and others, Agassiz was a great man. And he was from Switzerland, then he comes to the United States. He did incredible work in the United States, American biology and zoology, and taxonomy and other things are basically the work of Agassiz. But he said that we believe in creative evolution. This is the real debate. The way that the evolutionary debate is often presented to us, it's like you have these clerics in the church that don't know anything anyway, and they're just, upset with Darwin because of some of the conclusions. That's part of the story, but the real debate is a scientific debate in the scientific community. Joseph Priestley, who is one of the great minds of Europe at the end of the 18th century, early 19th century, amazing person, Unitarian, who believed in the unity of God and who wrote about Christianity, who was a scientist. He's regarded as one of the fathers of oxygen, and many things. Amazing person, Joseph Priestley. But one of the things that he insisted on is that when you study science, you must study the history of science. And I think this is really important for us because a lot of us do study science. We study medicine, biology, these different sciences, which are great. But like, you need to study the history of that field. Because when you study the history of the field, then you see the debates. Then you see how you ended up where you are. Pasteur, for example, will dominate the medical discourse of the West at the expense of Hahnemann. And Hahnemann, who is one of the fathers of homeopathy, he's just as good as Pasteur. He's better. He is also a great scientist. But Hahnemann is sort of forgotten. He's pushed to the side. And then Pasteur becomes everything. And you need to know the whole story. You need to go back and look at Hahnemann as well. And the same thing, in the great debate over evolution, most 19th century biologists believed in evolution. Long before Darwin. But they believed in creative evolution, and they believed that evolution is one of the signs of God's existence. And that history is filled with the extinction of species. Although one of the things they insisted on, which is still valid to this day, is that species are demarcated. They are clearly distinct. We have no evidence of a species becoming another species. The species are set. And one of the ways that we define species is the fact that animals within a species can usually procreate. So if you cross a dog with a wolf, you will have a puppy that is a wolf and a dog. So that means that dogs and wolves belong to the same species. A donkey and a horse belong to the same species. If you cross them, you get what? A mule. The mule won't be able to reproduce. It's sterile. Although it's an amazing animal, strong. It has all the qualities of a donkey, strength, and other qualities, and it has also the qualities of a horse. Mules are amazing, but you take here the two limits of the species, and they can cross, so they belong to the same species. But you don't see species changing. This was the main argument, perhaps, against Darwin. Certainly one of the main arguments. And for that reason, the proponents of Darwinian theory always talk about the missing links. They're still missing. We haven't found any